Good morning. I am Harry Cole, the Sun's editor at large. This is a very special episode of Never Mind the Ballots. As you can see, I'm not in a studio. I'm actually in an airport. Jack Elsom, our political editor, is in Downing Street, where a bomb has gone off politically today, and where it detonated was Makerfield, where our chief political correspondent, Martina Bet, is there. Good morning, everybody. Jack, you're looking fresh. We'll come to you in a moment, but Martina, tell us what's happened overnight.
It's been a very long night. Just after 3 a.m., the results were announced, and Andy Burnham won very comfortably. He had a majority of more than 9,000. And Reform did not as well as people were saying. You know, we all polls put Andy Burnham first, but not quite that 9,000 majority. And even with Restore eating into that Reform vote, both of them combined would have still given Andy Burnham the victory. So it was when he arrived at the count at the edge in Wigan, near Wigan Town Centre, he was met with big applause. Everyone was there. All his closest allies were there. Lisa and Andy, after he made a speech, Andy Burnham made a speech that was all about hope, lots of platitudes. Elections are not won on detail. So his speech sort of reflected that. And Lisa and Andy afterwards came to talk to the media. She said that for the next few hours, Andy was going to focus on getting some rest, but that there will be a conversation with the Prime Minister over the course of the weekend.
He must have been, cock, the king of the north, got complete vindication. As you say, he won more than 50% of the vote. Nigel Farage's candidate wasn't the best candidate, even his eyes would admit. But they did fall significantly short. Is that what we call the Burnham factor? Is that does that strengthen his case now that he's the only person in Labour that's going to beat Nigel Farage?
Of course it does. As I said, it was a huge victory for Andy Burnham. Having said that, I do wonder how much of the sort of anti-Starmer factor has played a part in this, because at the end of the day, it's quite appealing for voters here, knowing how Keir Starmer is so unpopular, that a vote for Andy Burnham was going to be a vote to get rid of a very unpopular Prime Minister. So I think in Makerfield, probably the biggest ally of Andy Burnham has been Sir Keir Starmer.
The irony being that Reform was the slogan in the local elections just 8-9 weeks ago was vote Reform, get rid of Starmer, and now the Labour Party's slogan in Makerfield was vote, get rid of Starmer.
Yeah, exactly, and I think, as I say, that's very appealing.
Yeah, go on.
Having said that, throughout, it was really weird. So the day before polling day, Andy Burnham had a sort of campaign rally with all the people that had been on the campaign for weeks. Loads of activists were there, but all different factions of the Labour Party were just sort of vying for Andy Burnham's attention. There were blue Labour people, there were former Momentum organiser. I heard that Jeremy Corbyn's son, Seb Corbyn, was also there. And I think it's very easy when all these people have got a common purpose, right, to defeat the Prime Minister, to win this by-election. But then, just today, the questions are just going to get harder, because being able to govern Britain better is a completely different thing. Keir Starmer had 4 years, and he still arrived in number 10 with with no plan, or he was seen as a man with no plan. But Andy Burnham has had 5 weeks. They say he's ready, but he would quite like to have a few weeks to prepare for government. And what happens next? There's all sorts of questions. Of course, he doesn't want to be the person to trigger the leadership contest, and he would like Keir Starmer to go on his own accord and set a timetable. He would probably want to speak to his allies and people in his campaign. They would probably want to see a handover conference. But whether Keir Starmer will want to go, that's a different question. And even this morning, we heard some of the allies of the Prime Minister saying that he's just not going to do that.
Well, on that exact point, there's a man with some sunglasses on, what looks like suspiciously like a hangover, some political editor. Is he going to resign? Not you. You should, but not the Prime Minister.
Wow, yeah, I'm hearing a very, very sunny Downing Street this morning, although I think it's looking pretty miserable, probably inside that building right now, because you're right. It's been a disastrous result for the Prime Minister, despite the fact he's trying to put a brave face on it by wishing Andy Burnham the best this morning, because it is a referendum on Keir Starmer's leadership. And now I think it is make or mind up time for the Prime Minister. Does he want to continue in the job? Is he going to fight a leadership election? Everything which they have told us so far, in public anyway, is that Keir Starmer is adamant that he will fight any contest to his authority. But, and it's a massive but, every Prime Minister, every leader in history always says they're going to fight right up until the moment that they don't. And what we are hearing now is that West Streeting, Andy Burnham will essentially present Keir Starmer with an ultimatum. Do you want to step down? Do it with dignity, do it gracefully, and then we can slug it out amongst ourselves? Or do you want us to rip the heart out of your government, push more of our MPs to say they have confidence in you, ministers will resign, cabinet ministers will resign. And at that point, yes, you can always rearrange the deck chairs in the Titanic, do some tinkering, put some ultra loyalists into government jobs, totally over promoted. But actually, it gets to a point where you have just that cascade of MPs, ministers saying they don't have confidence in you anymore, that actually the decision is taken out of your hands. And so either one of those scenarios, neither obviously good for the Prime Minister, but it's looking like it could, Andy Burnham's allies are saying they're not going to move in the next 72 hours. But then after that, it seems they're going to be moving pretty quickly.
I mean, classic. That's just classic Andy Burnham, isn't it? Is it now is the moment? Like now is the strike while the iron is hot. If he doesn't even have the balls to tell the Prime Minister to go and move, he's got a semi-mandate now from 20,000 people in Makerfield. Like surely he can't try and string this out and do this merry little dance. Everyone knows he wants to be the Prime Minister. Everyone knows he hates Keir Starmer. Just go for it, surely.
Yeah, he's not coming back to Westminster to sit on the backbenches, is he? This is something which he's had his eyes on for some time now. Clearly, Labour MPs, I think, will lap him up. If he can win in an area...
He's tried twice. He's tried twice and lost.
He has tried twice, but these are different scenarios at the moment. Labour MPs are looking at their seats. Many of them are going to fall like dominoes to reform at the next election on current polling trajectories. They are now seeing someone who can beat reform in their own backyard, in an area which really Labour have no right to win at the moment. Very fertile territory for Nigel Farage. If he can win there, they think that he is the one to lead them to the promised land. But as Martina said, being Mayor of Manchester and having those sort of North Korean popularity levels which he has, that is now going. We're already seeing in the campaign his popularity starting to tank. And then, when he gets into Downing Street and he's confronted by all of those problems which Keir Starmer's confronted, immigration, welfare, defence, taxes, the like, his popularity will probably start to fade even more. And so clearly, I think Labour MPs are going to be the ones to go, he is our last Hail Mary in terms of trying to win this general election. Well, he actually managed to deliver in Downing Street, in the building behind me. That's a different kettle of fish.
Good quote. I saw a quote from this morning's paper written by one Harry Cole, I think. Martina, what are they saying up there in Makerfield? Obviously, he said he's not going to talk for the next 72 hours. But surely the idea that Andy Burnham, who has no track record other than losing 2 leadership elections, the guy couldn't even beat Ed Miliband, put it that way. He painted a couple of buses yellow in Manchester. He spaffed a load of cash that was given to him by the Treasury. He's done all the easy bits. We don't know what he stands on foreign policy, geopolitics, on domestic taxation, or spending, on tax. The guy's flip-flopped so many times, the Tories have literally printed his face on actual flip-flops. Surely he can't get away, and he wouldn't be so arrogant to think that he could get away with not having some form of leadership contest, even if it's just a couple of weeks. There needs to be some sort of testing of his mettle, surely.
Yeah, well, that's what the Prime Minister wants, and I think the reason why the Prime Minister wants that is because he knows that once the scrutiny is on Andy Burnham and what actually his agenda for comment will be, is going to start crumbling down, right? So that's the argument of the Prime Minister. And you're right, it was very easy when he was Greater Manchester Mayor, and he had, obviously, we should give him credit where it's due, like the buses here, speaking to people, they all say they are a great thing. Having said that, it was a policy that was already given to him. But talking about the difficulties that he's going to have, as I was saying before, there's lots of these different factions in his campaign. And when it comes to immigration, for instance, we already know that he's been advised by some people that find Shabana Mahmood's immigration reforms really unpalatable. So when he gets when he's going to have the same PLP that Keir Starmer has. So he's just going to have the same problems once he gets into number 10. And in terms of all the stuff that he wants to do, renationalizing public utilities, that's going to cost a lot of money. And he's changed his mind about the fiscal rules a few times. He said that we shouldn't be too close to the bond markets, then changed his mind. We found out yesterday that Richard Hughes, the OBR former chief, joined his campaign and has been advising him. But the question is, who's going to be in his cabinet and who's going to be his chancellor? Because he really wants to avoid a scenario
it
similar
feels
to
like
what
he's
happened
already
to Liz
built
Truss.
his government.
You know them. Yeah, it does feel like that. I mean, for the past few weeks, the favorite hobby of Labour
Jack, I'm
MPs.
going to need you to mute for a moment. Sorry, I mean, this is chaos, but Jack, just mute for a moment, because I can't hear Martina, because, I mean, there's presumably an absolute feral pack of broadcasters on Downing Street
is.
all going live at the same time. But if you mute for a second, go on, Martina, say again about the cabinet.
Yeah, the Labour MP's favourite hobby for the past 2 weeks has been to sort of guess who's going to be in Andy Burnham's cabinet. So we know that Ed Miliband could potentially be his chancellor, but that's going to bring quite a lot of problems. We know Ed Miliband is very against drilling in the North Sea, for instance. He was on resignation watch last week because of the defence investment plan, and he didn't want to see any cuts to net zero and to his department. So will he really want to be so tight to Ed Miliband to the point that anything he does, he might have Ed Miliband resigning? So that's a question. Although I am told that they do think Ed Miliband is going to be his chancellor. Then there's also some questions.
God help us. I mean, seriously? Ed Miliband?
Well,
I mean, God help us.
Yesterday, someone else. And it's going to be difficult. And look at the by-election in Scotland, right? There's lots of Scottish Labour MPs that
you took the question out of my mouth.
Sorry, yeah, and I mean, the Tories have done really well. They seized on the opportunity because it was basically a referendum on the North Sea. They want to see more drilling there for tax receipts and for jobs. The SNP, of course, have been damaged by the scandal of Peter Murrell. And then we have Labour, who's been damaged by basically Keir Starmer and their policy on net zero. So the Tories have been able to seize on this, and they've done really well tonight. When it comes to Andy Burnham, if he puts as Chancellor someone like Ed Miliband, all these Scottish Labour MPs are not going to like it. And going back to what I was saying, there's just going to be trouble ahead for Andy Burnham's premiership if he is being advised by all these factors that actually ideologically they not see eye to eye.
Martina, you make a great point about the Tories in Scotland. Just fill us in. So, by my understanding, I think it's the first time the Conservative Party have won a Scottish by-election since the 1960s. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Kemi Badenoch will be very happy this morning. It's a bit, for her, it's a bit of a shame that Andy Burnham is overshadowing this win. But for the Tories, Kemi Badenoch is doing very well at the moment in terms of favourability ratings. As a leader, she's got much better, but that has not translated into the Conservative brand. So they did need this little bit of a boost. To give you an example, today the Tories were on 2%. So that's reform, despite the fact that they've done really badly. They were still on 35% of the general vote, meaning that the two parties, what it showed, despite the fact that I do think there will be a little bit of soul searching in reform, it sort of reinforces the idea that the two-party system is completely dead, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of Kemi Badenoch, I'm sure she will be very happy today, and she will be even reinforced by the idea that she does need to stick to her guns, and when it comes to net zero, really bring it home, like really reinforce that argument.
Exactly. Jack, I mean, he's almost nodding off there in Downing Street. He's in the sunshine. He's fallen asleep. He's still there. There he is. He's back in the game. Jack, on that net zero point, little birdie tells me that one of the aces that Andy Burnham might have up his sleeve is a big shock and awe announcement on net zero. He's very close to the GMB union, who obviously represents North Sea oil and gas interests. And actually, as part of his "I'm not a total commie" sort of rebrand, he might just start to relax those net zero rules. What are you hearing on that?
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Andy Burnham is not as zealous on net zero as Keir Starmer or Ed Miliband. And even if he puts Ed Miliband into one of the top jobs, you'd imagine that the wings would be clipped a little bit here. Net zero now. Yeah. Many people on the Labour side, old blue collar Labour, working class heartlands, they are getting really sick of net zero. One, because of jobs, and two, because of bills. And so both of those things put together, you can imagine Andy Burnham looking at it and go, you know what? It's not a political fight that I want right now. And actually, if we can get a few billion quid in tax receipts alongside it, then fantastic. You know, they've got these two big decisions on the Jackdaw oil field and the Rosebank gas field still sitting on the Prime Minister's desk. Andy Burnham, if he gets in, you know, clearly they're going to say it's a statutory decision for the Energy Secretary, but clearly these are politically driven. And you can imagine a situation in which Andy Burnham decides to greenlight both of them, gets a quick political win, wins over some of his Labour MPs. And yes, you might get the odd clucking from some of the Green Brigade who are not happy about it. But actually, I think there will be fringe voices in this rather than actually the mainstay of not just the Labour Party, but also voters as well.
So I mean, that could be there. So there is. It's not. I mean, I've written. It's live now. It's live now on the Sun website. And it'll be in tomorrow's paper. I've written my views on what an Andy Burnham government might look like. But yes, there's some silver lining there if he is ready to tackle the obvious question. In fact, you know, the government, Keir Starmer, to his credit, got, you know, rediverted international development spending into defence. Now, obviously, the next thing on the list is sending some of that net zero money to it. I mean, it's all very well flying around to summits around the world, you know, looking like international do-gooders, but we can't afford to pay our troops. So, you know, surely the money's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, I think that, you know, if Andy Burnham clearly goes down that path, and I think many people will give him credit for it. The problem is at the moment, Harry, is that because he's campaigning almost entirely in platitudes, we really don't know any flesh which he might put on the bones of an Andy Burnham administration. We're sort of getting like the shell of what he might do.
Yeah.
But actually, in terms of the hardcore, proper detailed policies, clearly he hasn't been subject to scrutiny. And in this campaign, sometimes he flirts and he teases big national policies. And then you try and scratch beneath the surface and you watch people interview him and he goes, well, I am not going to preempt the good people of Makerfield by getting into national politics and taking their votes for granted. And so we haven't really seen that deep probing of what he's going to be doing in the building behind me, should he get in there. But now the onus is on him to really come forward with a pitch. It's also why some people want him to fight a leadership contest rather than having a coronation. They want to see him sweat under the spotlight of scrutiny because currently he is very untested. As Martina said, being mayor of Manchester is totally, totally different to being Prime Minister. And so that is the argument for a contest, which some people are pushing, rather than just putting him in the building behind me and letting him get on with it.
Some people are pushing a contest, me included. There's no way they can get away. There's no way. There's no mandate. He's got no mandate. He's not, you know, the guy likes football and painted some buses yellow. That's it. Martina, while you're on the ground in Makerfield, we'll come back to Andy Burnham and his complete lack of credibility manifesto, or indeed various other things and problems with him. But there's been an interesting story on the right playing out in Makerfield with the fact that Reform, you know, have fallen short of where they were even a few weeks ago in the local elections. Obviously, they're up against a very popular local candidate in Andy Burnham, but that Restore number was about 6.8%. That's going to start to hurt Nigel Farage, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely going to start to hurt. And I think, as I said earlier, there will be some soul searching in Reform headquarters after tonight. I know that they will try to obviously win the Greater Mayoralty by-election, which has been triggered as a result of Andy Burnham's victory. And it's going to be different because, as I said earlier, this was a very bizarre by-election where the people here, the 70,000 people here, had a direct impact on who could end up in number 10. So the Greater Manchester will be different. Having said that, I do think that Reform strategy will change. Will they go further to the right to sort of appeal to those voters that have gone to Restore, or will they try to stay more centrist if Kemi Badenoch continues to do well? But the fact that the right is now split into three is not doing any of them any favours.
I think
Andy Burnham is doing Burnham a good favour. Go on, Jack.
I was going to say, it must be mixed feelings this morning for Nigel Farage. You know, on the one hand, clearly, he fell well short of Andy Burnham in parts of the world which he ought to be winning, and he needs to win if he wants to win the next general election. Clearly, by-elections are different, and if you think that your man is going to be Prime Minister, then you're going to vote for him.
And this wasn't your usual by-election either. This was
exactly. You're totally right.
By-election.
But still, I think that the way this campaign has unfolded for Reform probably hasn't been as appealing as he would have wanted it to have been. But at the same time, I think Restore did fall well short of the expectations they were putting up. You know, Rupert Lowe going around there saying he's
They
going
were
to have a
saying
chance
they
of
were
winning
saying
this
they're going to
seat.
be on 20%. Yeah,
Yeah, there was also a
they were
big
saying
fear.
20%.
There was also a big fear, I think, that Restore would be the difference between an Andy Burnham victory and not. They were saying they could skim enough votes off the top of Reform to deprive Nigel Farage of that victory. They've fallen well short of that. And, you know, they ploughed everything into this. This is not a party which is swimming in resources, but they threw the kitchen sink Restore Britain at this by-election. They are not going to be able to replicate that on a national stage from the standing start where they are now. Clearly, if they want to try and professionalise and expand their brand, maybe. But I think Nigel Farage will be feeling a little bit actually happy this morning that Restore clearly aren't the threat that they thought they were going to be.
Intriguing. Right, guys, I know, Martina, you need to go to bed because you haven't slept. And Jack, I know you had a long
I need to get a
night
coffee, I think.
with your top Downing Street sources in a well-known nightclub not far from the House of Commons. But tell me, Jack, how's the next 24 hours going to play out, and what's the world going to look like on Monday? Are we gonna, are we gonna see a podium moment? Are we gonna come see a sort of quivering wreck of Keir Starmer with a big fat bottom lip, talking about duty and being very sad, or does he really think he can fight this?
Everything we're hearing from Downing Street at the moment is they have some sort of plan. They want to basically throw up as many hurdles as they can for Andy Burnham.
They've been saying that for 2 years.
No, I know. What they are going to try and do immediately is say that Andy Burnham's focus now has to be on the Greater Manchester mayoralty by-election, which his vacancy has just triggered.
Pull the other one. It's got bells on.
Well, exactly, and this is the point they are making. But the team Burnham camp go. They told me word for word. They said they think Andy's going to disappear to Manchester for a few weeks. They are nuts. And they will be nuts because Andy Burnham is not coming back here to sit on these backbenches. He's going to be the Prime Minister. Clearly, we think that there's going to be a 72-hour grace period over the weekend where he will let Keir Starmer reflect on these results. What you'll likely see, and we're already seeing it this morning, is more MPs coming out saying that Keir Starmer needs to resign. How many that is by Monday, who knows? But you can, I think, imagine next week that trickle just turn into a mighty flood.
And Martina, what's going to happen in Makerfield's day? Presumably Andy's going to be out in his little T-shirt and his cool new trainers.
That's right. He's got a rally in a few hours. Just speaking to the people of Makerfield. But again, similar to his speech today, I reckon he'll just talk again about hope and unity, as Jack said. Lots
just
of
more
platitudes.
Yeah.
Like lots of broad
outrageous,
themes,
which
is how it was the general
outrageous.
election, without getting into detail. Yeah, it's true.
I mean,
it's the same
surely.
with lots and lots of issues. Talking about the European Union and Brexit, we know that he said at Labour conference that he would like to rejoin the EU. And then we're in Makerfield. Lots of people here voted for Brexit. And when he was asked about it again, he said, this is not an issue I want to talk about now, and sort of a U-turn on his comments. And, you know, he's actually quite similar to Keir in different ways. More popular, is very charismatic. But in terms of how he flip-flops, he's quite similar to Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I mean, does anyone ask him the obvious question yet? As to, can a woman have a penis? I mean, Jack, that'll be your first question at his press conference. His first press conference, right?
It'll be in the mix. It'll be in the mix.
He's dodged that one. A politician's answer. He spent too long in Downing Street. Guys, right, Martina, you go and get some sleep. Jack, you go and get a coffee. It's gonna be a hell of a 96 hours. I suspect.
There we go. Here comes the removal van.
Obviously. Here comes, look at that. World exclusive, once again on Never Mind the Ballots. They're coming to crowbar Keir Starmer out of the office. I mean, is he going to go with dignity or is he going to be dragged out?
I can't see the screen. This is not happening,
guys,
is it?
No, it's big old removal vans turned up. You get some sleep, Martina. Jack, I look forward to reading your pearls of wisdom again tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe. Sun Politics is everywhere. It's on YouTube. It's on Instagram. I'm told it's now on the TikTok. I'm not allowed anywhere near that, apparently. But Jack and Ryan and Martina, big stars on the TikTok. Don't forget to subscribe. See you very soon. Lots more to come on Never Mind the Ballots.